Friends and family, thank you for joining me here at the American News Network with Chris Sanders, major news network on your apps and on and Roku TVs. We have a president that made it to be 100 years old in October, and today he has passed. President Jimmy Carter. And even though I complain about him as far as giving away the Panama Canal, he expected them to be as honest as he was. And few people were as honest as President Carter, or as good of a humanitarian and nuclear scientist, Navy veteran. But rest in peace, President Carter. So we're going back in time here. This is 1980, during his State of the Union, January 23rd, the last of it. I can remember as a little child my dad screaming, always having a problem with him and Bernie Sanders. But they welcomed Reagan quite hardcore. But he was all of our presidents, at least not all, excuse me. I'm going to say, with Reagan and Carter, we had outstanding Americans, humanitarians. And we'll finish in the end with prayer by Carter for what that he was doing with Habitat of Humanity. And I'm going to go over what the Chinese have called the J6ers, and not just the floating triangle that they have, but also they have about 600 to 1,000 MiG-18s that have been converted to do kamikaze missions into Taiwan, South Korea, and Japan. I'll go over that here in a bit. This is President Carter, and like Kamala, I know he's going to get in a while and to start speaking. So, excellent human being, but when Reagan came onto the stage, he floored everybody, and I'm not kidding you. All right, so President Carter, God bless you, sir. So here we go. See, he still hadn't started talking. All right, here we go. President Carter.
Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States.
All right, so I'm just going to go into this. First, I'm going to go into this Chinese triangle, and then I'm going to get into a little bit of Chinese strategy that they're up and doing. So this is their 6th generation stealth fighter that they got. It can go into outer space and back into the atmosphere. Okay, it'd be a mothership type thing that's got communications with their drones, and this is a heads up for the people that don't know about it. And it's been spotted everywhere. Okay, this is China's version of it's different. This is something they claim can go like up into the International Space Station. It is their 6th generation fighter. Now, I'm going to get into something so you know that China is just playing a different ball game altogether. And it's it's about the MiG 15s and the MiG 19s, and this is a 1950s MiG, and there were about 600 to 1,000 in China. I'm zooming in here. We can see through Google what they're doing, but these are full-size Soviet-era MiGs from the 1950s. And they've retrofitted all these MiGs with bombs. and they're unmanned, so they're drones, but they're actually the full-sized Soviet-era MiGs, okay? Now here they are right here, and they've made them, they were making them up even into 1980, so we know through satellites that they're sitting on 1,000 of them right off the coast of Taiwan. And on a one-way mission kamikaze, they're unmanned. Well, they could easily hit Taiwan all over the place just from this base camp. And now they've made 3 of these base camps. So this is a 3D rendering of the base camp, the actual base camp that China is looking at, okay, on the other side of where Taiwan is. And you can see it right here. So now you see these aircraft bases where they put these drones. They're flying these things in conjunction in cover with other actual aircraft. And they're spooking Taiwan, okay? And so keep in mind, these are full-sized drones with several different types of bombs that are on them. And that's the deal. And so they've got, this exact aircraft, just so that you can see a good look at what it is. It is that old MiG, okay? The old Soviet MiG, the MiG-19. And they have about 1,000 of these in at least 3 to 4 bases up and down the Chinese coast. Okay, this is major news. Now, China can use these as a war weapon against South Korea, Japan, the Philippines, and they're quite proud of this baby right here, as they should be. It can hold all the same war weaponry that the original Soviet aircraft could from the USSR. And it's just a heads-up factor because Taiwan's circled right now by 80 warships, but not only are they circled by that, they have this threat. Now, when you look at the engine system in this puppy, it's straight out 1950s Soviet engines, but, this thing packs a lot of power, and it can go Mach if need be. The Soviets made everything that could really, perform. And so this is a threat, and these are just basic munitions that were in the olden days, but, that green one right there can easily destroy buildings, and we got ones that are made to destroy ships, and this thing's coming in. Now, if they've got a confirmed 1,000, Jesus, they might have 2,000. So whereas we're making the Shahed drone in Japan and in Taiwan, they have this Soviet MiG, full-sized, as a war weapon for Japan, South Korea. And they are celebrating President Carter like you can't even believe out there. I was, just doing something now. This is a little interesting stuff. I'm going to let this young man talk that's coming up. And his name is Anton. And we had a secret nuclear military base in Greenland during World War II. And as it's melting, I think it gives us a priority to get in there. I'm going to let him talk about some stuff, but remember, there's 60,000 people there now. Did the United States have an involvement back in the 40s that predates it? Well, it turns out we do. Now, that's not what he's saying, but in my opinion, it's a legal loophole for us to take a possession. That's just an a landman type of opinion, and sometimes we need that. So here we go. Listen to this.
And today we're going to discuss something just a little bit different. We're going to discuss a military secret. And in this case, a secret military base that was formed by the United States in Greenland, whose purpose was never officially revealed until approximately 20 years ago. But much more specifically, we're going to discuss an accidental rediscovery of this secret base by NASA scientists just a few weeks ago. And that's because this base has now been buried in the ice and it's practically impossible to access. And so let's talk about this in a little bit more detail and actually discuss why this military base is somewhat important for a lot of different types of research especially when it comes to climatology, and specifically the growth of ice shelves. And here we're discussing the so-called Camp Century, a really bizarre project from the 1960s, whose cross-section you can basically see right here. Now, if you want to read about this yourself, all of the documents about this are in the description below, but in essence, back in the late 1950s, the United States Army proposed building a scientific research base pretty much in the middle of the ice shelf in Greenland. And you can actually sort of find it yourself if you go to any online map, such as Google Maps, and if you basically start zooming in somewhere, I guess, here maybe? Yeah, alright, this is going to be really hard to find, so let's just plot in the coordinates. 77.16 north, 61.13 west. And it's basically right here. But the thing is, there are obviously no images of this camp, and there are no satellite pictures of this entire area. And even if there were any images, it would just be snow. And that's because the entire camp was built into the ice shelf. And there's even a short documentary online that should be in the description below that basically shows you how this camp was built, the overall layout of the camp, and of course talks a little bit more about the main purpose. But in this case, the actual purpose of the camp was classified. And so even though officially...
So you know what? It would be nuclear would be the reason. And that's just kind of my point. So I'm going to talk over Senator Bernie Sanders here, but he's going to get into something that I think that we should all address. It's not necessarily the common culprits. He's going to address how Zuckerberg and Bill Gates and Elon Musk have more money between the three of them than the bottom third of America. Interesting statistic. But then he's going to talk about the war corporations, which would be BlackRock and Vanguard. So I'm kind of amazed that he would call them out like that, as far as them being the culprits and the shadow part that's feeding the internal destruction of America. But nevertheless, I do believe it's true. And so I'm going to let him address some of those things, and then we're going to cut back to President Carter. So God bless everybody, but here's something from Cousin Bernie.
The uber wealthy buy $500 million yachts, $270 million mansions. They have private islands all to themselves.
Nothing wrong with that.
Jets that take them all over the world. And occasionally they take cool trips on rocket ships that blast off to the edge of outer space. A lot of fun. They also receive the best health care money can buy, and they send their kids to the very best private schools
as they should
in the world. In this America, the three wealthiest men, Elon Musk, Bezos, and Mark Zuckerberg, own more wealth than the bottom half of our society.
Wow.
Three people own more wealth than the bottom half of our society. And their wealth is skyrocketing. Musk alone is now worth over $450 billion. And combined, these three men are now worth almost $1 trillion. In the other America, millions of Americans are struggling just to provide for the basic necessities of life. In this America, over 60% of our people live paycheck to paycheck. Millions work for starvation wages. 85 million are uninsured or underinsured. And over 60,000 die each year because they can't afford to go to a doctor on time. In other words, we are living in a nation today where a handful of billionaires have more money than they could spend in 1,000 lifetimes, while at the same time, millions are living in desperation, fear, and are struggling to survive. But let's be clear. Our country is not just experiencing an unprecedented level of income and wealth inequality. Today, the ruling elite have brought about a situation in which we now have more concentration of ownership than we have ever had before.
Okay,
Looking good for Busy.
listen to
Just
this.
the other day, we talked about how his foundation was given immunity and privileges in Kenya that raised a lot of eyebrows and a lot of concerns. But now the High Court of Kenya has suspended its privileges and immunities under the Privileges and Immunities Act, which has been granted by the government. Justice Bahati Mohamud.
Okay,
Recently,
so there you go. Bill Gates still wanted, he wants to go see probably if he could get some sort of immunity from Trump, and he is wanted in Kenya. Now, China spent over $50 billion in Africa, and these are photos of the bosses that have been chained, and they have set the facilities on fire in Africa. They don't want China's business, and this is kind of how they get down over there to let them know that they're not welcome. And so this is going off in China, where China has made serious investments, and Africa has responded with them not wanting Chinese involvement. So there we go. It's major news that's come of 50 billion in Africa. Xi leads to violence against the Chinese, and the locals have been showing pretty intense emotions as far as what's been going on over there and what they're willing to take. So I thought that was pretty interesting. In other news, Walmart is going to continue doing certain kinds of clothes fashions. No kidding. I didn't even know they did this. But they're going to do the Hezbollah chief guy, but one of them, but not the other. No kidding. Pictures speak 1,000 words. I'll let this. So Walmart removes the ex-Hamas, but in the Sinwars, shirts have been removed. But the Hezbollah Nasrallah t-shirt stays. No kidding, in Walmart. Can you believe that? So we're going to call it terror fashion. You want some terror fashion? Jesus, I don't know. Check out Miss Piggy or Miss Cheney in the morning. That would be terror fashion 101 to me, or even Nancy Pelosi when she wakes up in the morning. But anyways, Walmart, I'm sure this would piss Sam Walton over and make him roll over in his grave. Just seeing all this type of stuff happen. Now, check out this. This would be Jack Wagon Joe's investment in the Taliban. What do you mean by that investment in the Taliban? Well, when we left, that $85 billion worth of war weaponry, we empowered the Taliban. They kicked off, they attacked Pakistan, they attacked Iran. Wow, that'd almost be a genius move by Jack Wagon Joe, you would think. Is he that smart? Well, even Iran is getting threatened by the Taliban. Yep, that's true, and they're rolling in with U.S. gear, courtesy of Jack Wagon Joe, so everybody's pretty happy with them. All of our enemies, they're not too happy with Jack Wagon Joe, but score one for you, Jack Wagon Joe. Who would have known you'd given this to the biggest crash test dummy in the area? And so we see our U.S. war equipment, again, courtesy of the Jack Wagon Joe administration, storming off throughout Afghanistan into Pakistan and down into Iran and into Syria, causing terror wherever they can in the name of just what they do. And it's odd because you would think, is that us? Is that us? No, it's not us. It's a bunch of evil goat herders that have our equipment, courtesy of the chef from South Park. That'd be General Lloyd Austin. Yeah, and Miley, they figured, you know what? We can just leave all this gear there. America, this is treason. And there's murder that is happening because of the irresponsible actions of the way we pulled out and we left weapons of terror just all over the ground like candy for another country to